Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Sickle Cell Action Network, an internet radio show presented by Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative and sponsored by Prolong Pharmaceuticals. We're coming to you live from Indianapolis, Indiana, and we're here to serve you by providing up-to-date information and opinion on all matters pertaining to sickle cell disease. My name is Gary A. Gibson, and I am your host for the next 2 hours. Let me start by saying that I don't have sickle cell disease, nor do I carry the sickle cell trait. In spite of that, I am no stranger to sickle cell. Quite the contrary. You see, even though I don't have sickle cell, it has had a very huge impact on my life. That's true because its complications took my wife from me after 12 years of marriage. It also caused her to have a miscarriage that resulted in the loss of our twin babies that she was carrying while in a sickle cell crisis. So all told, sickle cell has taken 3 lives from me, and I feel the pain of those losses every single day. I currently serve as the president and CEO of Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative, a community-based organization that has been serving people with sickle cell for over 45 years. Each day, I attempt to transform the pain of my losses into positive energy that is focused on making a difference for those who are battling sickle cell. From being involved with sickle cell for over 40 years, I'm able to say that much progress has been made, but there is still so much work to do. This show is an opportunity to contribute to the ever-expanding dialogue about sickle cell that is taking place all around the world. Our show is about raising awareness, but it is also about so much more. I like to say that sickle cell awareness is important, but we need more than awareness. Those living with sickle cell are already aware. That makes me ask, so what are we doing for them? My answer is, not enough. That's why we've named this show the Sickle Cell Action Network, because awareness without action has very little impact. We want this show to be a source of information and a call to action to help those who must live with sickle cell in their midst. We have designed this show to provide information that is beneficial to patients, caregivers, family members, and friends alike. Most importantly, we want people with sickle cell to know and understand that they are not alone. The Sickle Cell Action Network show features live guests who are healthcare providers, patients, advocates, and others who are engaged in the fight to eradicate sickle cell and ease its burden on those it affects. Today we're going to be talking about sickle cell and pregnancy. My guest will be none other than Tosin Ola, the founder of the Sickle Cell Warriors and the mother of twin boys. Tosin is also a registered nurse, so she is highly capable of helping us cover this all too important topic. We are serious about sharing valuable information, and we hope that you will join us every week, same time, same station. If you've missed some of our previous editions or wish that you could listen to them again, don't worry. Just go to the Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative YouTube page and you'll find them there. Now, let's get on with our show. We'll start with this week's edition of Sickle Cell News Update. And we do have some very good stories to share with you today, or some good news, which, of course, there's been a lot of good news in the sickle cell world lately. And we're going to keep sharing that kind of news with you as we hear it. We will also share the other type of news that sometimes comes forward, the not so good news, all with the intent of giving you balanced information. Our first article today is titled CRISPR, a potential cure for sickle cell disease. This is worthy of paying attention to. This is extremely exciting. We've been talking about the possibility of gene editing for a while now, and this news report is one that is highly encouraging regarding the future of gene editing and the ability to cure many, many people with sickle cell disease. And the way that the article reads is this way. Starts by saying sickle cell disease is caused by a mutation in the gene that codes for the protein beta globin, a component of red blood cells. A group of physicians and researchers have used CRISPR/Cas9 editing to correct the mutation in stem cells taken from the blood of affected patients. The team from UC Berkeley, UC San Francisco Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland Research Institute, and the University of Utah School of Medicine used CRISPR to fix the mutation in hematopoietic stem cells, cells that mature into red blood cells that were taken from sickle cell patients, according to a statement. The edited cells produced healthy hemoglobin, which mutated cells do not make. They also transplanted edited stem cells into mice, where they persisted 4 months after transplantation. suggesting that a potential therapy based on the approach would be long-lasting, according to their statement. The results are published in Science Translational Medicine. This is an important advance because for the first time we show a level of correction in stem cells that should be sufficient for a clinical benefit in persons with sickle cell anemia, said co-author Mark Walters, a pediatric hematologist and oncologist and director of UC San Francisco's Benioff Oakland's blood and marrow transplantation program. While a lot of work remains before the method reaches the clinic, the team's goal is to develop genome engineering-based treatments to fix the mutation in a patient's own stem cells so that the new blood cells produced by the patient are healthy. Current treatments for sickle cell disease include pain relievers and blood transfusions. While a bone marrow transplant is the only potential cure, finding a matching donor is challenging and surgery can be risky. Further work will include large-scale mouse studies and safety analysis. Walters and Jacob Korn, a senior author and scientific director of UC Berkeley's Innovative Genomics Initiative, are working to bring the treatment to clinical trials within the next 5 years. And while the team's initial focus is sickle cell anemia, the approach could be used to tackle other blood disorders, including beta thalassemia and severe combined immunodeficiency. Sickle cell disease is just one of many blood disorders caused by a single mutation in the genome, Korn said. It is very possible that other researchers and clinicians could use this type of gene editing to explore ways to cure a large number of diseases. And as I said at the outset, this is extremely promising, especially since they are now able to say that they were able to do this gene editing with real sickle cell patients' blood, and that it turns out in a very positive manner. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to hold on and hope that this continues down this positive path. Really excited about that, really. Okay, so the next story that I'm going to share with you is concerning longevity in sickle cell disease, and the title of the article, which is from the HemOnc Today website, the article says, or the title is, Environmental Genetic Factors May Predict Longevity in Sickle Cell Disease. And it reads like this. A case series of individuals with sickle cell disease who lived into their 9th decade revealed potential genetic and environmental factors associated with their longevity. The case report, published in Blood, included data from 4 women with sickle cell disease who have lived longer than 80 years. Let me repeat that. These women lived longer than 80 years. 3 women are American and received treatment at Thomas Jefferson University's Sickle Cell Center. The 4th woman resided in Brazil. 1 patient remained alive and in her 80s at the time of this report. The remaining 3 patients are now deceased but had lived into their 80s. In this study, Dr. Samir K. Ballas and his colleagues sought to observe common traits among patients with sickle cell disease who survive well beyond the average lifespan. The researchers observed that all octogenarian patients were women. On average, women with sickle cell disease live between 8 and 10 years longer than men, Ballas said. The researchers further noted that all octogenarian patients had little history of vaso-occlusive pain crises and no history of strokes. The U.S. patients had no history of acute chest syndrome, although the Brazilian patient had a history of this condition. Ballas and colleagues further noted that all of the octogenarian patients had low white blood cell counts, low hemoglobin levels, and normal biochemical parameters. They also had no history of hydroxyurea use. All octogenarian patients had several lifestyle factors in common, and this is for everybody to pay attention to. The things that they had in common to be able to live into their 80s includes no history of smoking, little to no alcohol consumption, excellent adherence to medication, medical appointments, and patient referrals, and normal or below normal body mass index. All patients had excellent family support, which in turn may be responsible for their excellent treatment adherence, Ballas said. We believed this contributed to their longevity, in addition to maintaining healthy lifestyles. The researchers acknowledge that their observations are anecdotal. However, Ballas asserted that physicians treating patients with sickle cell disease should consider initiating conversations about potentially actionable lifestyle factors. The message of our findings is to emphasize the environmental factors, Ballas said. These factors can be controlled or treated. We should counsel, advise, and educate patients to follow the examples of these long-living individuals with sickle cell disease, all of whom achieved a lifespan beyond what is expected of the general population. Again, one more time, let me repeat. All octogenarian patients had several lifestyle factors in common, including no history of smoking, little or no history of alcohol consumption, excellent adherence to medication, medical appointments, medication referrals, normal or below normal BMI, body mass index. It's a tremendous story and good research that I think needs to continue, but basically, if you do it right, you can live a long time. That's the moral of that particular story. And my last article for today is titled, "This 4-Year-Old's Lemonade Stand Raises Awareness for Sickle Cell." And it's written by Roz Edward of the Michigan Chronicle, and it goes like this. When I first read about Suki, the 4-year-old girl who's raising money for sickle cell awareness, my heart melted. As someone with close friends who are affected by the disease, her powerful story hit particularly close to home for me. For those unfamiliar, sickle cell anemia is a condition where there aren't enough healthy red blood cells to carry oxygen throughout the body. The gene is prevalent in people of African descent and is carried by 1 in 12 African Americans across the world. Although there's currently no cure for the disease, treatment can relieve pain and help prevent further problems associated with the disease. While Suki and her brother actually carry the sickle cell gene, the disease itself does not affect them. Instead, it's her cousins that suffer from sickle cell anemia and often experience painful sickle cell crises, which I'm sure have been life-changing experiences for a 4-year-old little girl to witness. Rather than sitting around and feeling sad for her family, Suki decided to take action and provide comfort for those affected by the disease in hopes of spreading awareness around the world. Let me say again, this is a 4-year-old girl. With the support of her parents, Suki launched Project Sickle Cell Awareness as a way to make a difference. Her project includes a lemonade stand on Lenox Avenue in Harlem, New York, a walkathon, and a GoFundMe account. All platforms that are dedicated to raising money to foster further research and treatments for the fight against sickle cell. While Suki's story is amazing and inspirational, there's so many youth just like Suki's cousins who suffer from this disease on a daily basis. Our hats go out or go off to little Suki, who is in Harlem, New York, and she is doing what she can as a 4-year-old to raise awareness for sickle cell disease. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. I am Gary A. Gibson, your host, and we're going to take a break, and when we return, we will start speaking with Tosin Ola, the founder of the Sickle Cell Warriors, a mother of 2 children, 2 twins, and also a nurse. We're looking forward to that. She's one of our favorite people. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, and I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host. Okay, welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, and I am Gary A. Gibson, your host, and in a moment we're going to start speaking with Tosin Ola about sickle cell and pregnancy. We have her on the line, but I did forget to mention that I want all of you to go to Huffington Post on the internet and look up a story called Tainted, and in that article you will find a lot of information about sickle cell disease, and the title of the article is called Tainted Blood, and it is a very, very long story. It is part 1 of a 3-part article on sickle cell disease, and yours truly is mentioned in the article, along with the work that Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative is doing, and also even mentioning this radio show, the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. So we're really thrilled with that, and hope that all of our listeners and followers take a look at this article, because it's great on a couple of levels. One is that we have a author who I know has been trying to get this article placed for well over a year, and congratulations to Angela G. King, the author. She's from the Detroit area, and Angela is working to get awareness about sickle cell out into the world, and she has done so by getting this placed into Huffington Post, which is a globally available publication, an internet publication, and secondly, because of the fact that Huffington Post has agreed to publish this story. I think that's fantastic as well. So you've got an author that's working on this story, working really hard over the last year plus to get this story written and placed, and then you've got a publication, Huffington Post, which has agreed to run this story, and it is a 3-part series, as I said. So they've made a significant investment, and on behalf of the entire sickle cell community, we'd like to say thank you to both the Huffington Post and to Angela G. King. So please take a look at that when you get a chance. It's a pretty good story. So with that, I'd like to now bring in Ms. Tosin Ola-Weissman, also known as Tosin Ola. Tosin, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Tosin.
Hello, Sickle Cell Action Network listeners.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Tosin, you're awesome as usual. I would like to say thank you for coming on our show again. You are, of course, one of our favorite guests, and we just had a mic drop for some reason, and it wasn't intentional. Hold on there. So welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy day and all of your activities to be with us. First off, as usual, you know the drill because you've been on the show before, but I do want you to tell people just a little bit about yourself, just in case there's people that are listening today that have not heard you before. So give us a little bit of background, if you will, Tosin. Tell us about yourself. How old are you? You know, where are you? Where were you born? Where do you live? What's your hemoglobin type? That kind of stuff, please.
All right. Thank you so much, Gary, for having me on the show. I'm really excited to just, I love this show. I listen to it every week, so I'm excited to be part of the programming once again. So my name is Tosin Ola, and I'm originally from Nigeria. I'm 36 years old. I was born in Nigeria, but I came to the U.S. when I was 4 years old. And then we went back to Nigeria when I was 10, and then I came back when I was 18. And the reason why I came back when I was 18 was predominantly because of my sickle cell disease. I have sickle cell hemoglobin SS, and I was having a lot of episodes and a lot of crises back home in Nigeria. And my parents were just really about the medical care I was receiving. So I came to America, I went to college here, and I became a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for over 13 years, and I've worked in pretty much almost every single area in the hospital. I worked in trauma, I worked in the ER, I worked in the ICU, I also worked in surgery. In addition to that, the last 3 years, I partnered with Mass Therapeutics to help them with the enrollment for the EPIC study, and that job has come to a conclusion now. But my main passion is the advocacy work I do through Sickle Cell Warriors. Sickle Cell Warriors is a nonprofit organization dedicated to education for those with sickle cell disease and also the general public, and empowerment for those with sickle cell disease. The organization, it's a website, sicklecellwarriors.com. We have the largest Facebook page, the largest Facebook community for sickle cell disease. We have over 19,133 people.
Incredible.
And it's growing by leaps and bounds. And I always tell people, the community, it was built essentially because I was, in the hospital. I felt isolated. I felt alone. And I just wanted to reach out to somebody who also had sickle cell, who knew what I was going through. And at that time, this was 2005, there was really no groups, no websites out there. So that was what the seed of Sickle Cell Warriors started with, that experience have people from all over the world.
That is incredible. 19,000 plus and growing. Tosin, so, you know, in addition to that, which I commend you for that. I mean, you had, I guess you didn't have the vision that it would get to be like it is, but you had a vision that said you need to share this, and you were certain that there were other people out there like you that needed to be able to connect and learn more about sickle cell and have some community partnerships, if you will. So you had vision for that, and I commend you for that. And two, I commend you for, on behalf of these millions of people worldwide, for being able to give them a voice, being able to give them a website that is one of the most, if not the most informative website about sickle cell in the entire planet. You've done a great job with that. You work hard on it, and we commend you for that.
Thank you so much, Gary. It does take a lot of work, and it's really a passion project of mine. So there are over 600 articles on the website, and it's essentially, you know, the questions that people don't feel comfortable talking to their doctor about, what they want to know about. And the Facebook page is just great for instant feedback and peer-to-peer sharing. So, like, one of the questions we had today was, somebody wanted to know, how do you deal with insomnia with your sickle cell? And that's a great question to ask other people that have sickle cell disease. So I'm really grateful for the community for embracing Sickle Cell Warriors, and really for everyone who launches the page and keeps it a positive, supportive space.
Okay, and I think that, of course, that is great. I follow what's happening on your Facebook page quite regularly, and there is a lot of communication. You have a lot of people that say, I'm wondering if anybody's dealt with this, I'm wondering if anybody's dealt with that, and then there are people that respond, and that's like, you know, helping each other out in a very big way. So it's because of you that that's able to happen. Again, we commend you and thank you. Our show today is about pregnancy and sickle cell, and you've got twin babies that are now 22 months old. On an earlier interview that we had with you, you said that you had a pretty difficult time with your pregnancy and the delivery. So still, you volunteered to be on our show today to help dispel some of the myths about sickle cell and pregnancy, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I guess what I'd like to know right now is, why do you feel it's important to talk about this topic? And then I'm going to ask you, why is it important to dispel the myths?
Well, I feel it's very important because there are a lot of myths that exist when it comes to pregnancy with sickle cell. I was told by several doctors that I shouldn't try to get pregnant because it's, you know, a high chance of me dying and my baby's not surviving. And there's all these fears that exist with, you know, and deciding to enter motherhood with sickle cell disease. And the thing that most people fail to realize is, yes, sickle cell is a complicated condition, but I always, you know, say that it should not stop you from living your dreams. And we've had a lot of women comment on the page that, you know, they wanted to get pregnant, or they were just thinking about starting a family, but they were really hesitant because of just all the myths that exist out there. And through my own experiences and just what I've learned through my journey, I hope that I'll be able to encourage and support other moms and moms-to-be and other family members who, just to have that encouragement that it's not impossible to have a child with sickle cell disease.
Okay, it's not impossible, but it's not necessarily easy. Would you agree with me on that?
Right. Exactly.
So we have to talk about.
It's not a walk in the park, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that a little bit more. But let's talk about the actual difficulties that you yourself experienced while you were pregnant. You talked about it once before a little bit, so if you don't mind, could you kind of just go over this again with us? What happened with your pregnancy?
So this wasn't my first pregnancy. I've been pregnant twice before and wasn't able to carry either of those pregnancies to term. I'd had early miscarriages for both of them. So this was essentially my third pregnancy. And when I found out I was pregnant, I was really surprised because we weren't even actively trying. I had been discouraged so much from the previous miscarriages that I kind of given up hope that it can happen for me. And once we found out we were pregnant, and then we went in for our appointment, and then we found out we were having twins, I mean, I started sobbing. I was crying. I was so upset because I was like, it's hard enough trying to have one kid with sickle cell. Now I'm going to try to have two. That definitely puts me in the high risk category. But the first trimester of my pregnancy wasn't actually difficult. It wasn't until the boys were getting bigger in the womb that's when the challenges happened. And I was hospitalized for 65 days between my second and third trimester. And I spent like essentially over 2 months in the hospital. But that was the only way that the doctors could ensure that they were able to monitor both me and the baby and keep us healthy.
So what was going on during that 65 days?
All right. So what started it was a crisis. I had a crisis. Like usual, I usually have a crisis every October. So I had this crisis, and it just wasn't getting better. And I'd been in pain for over 7 days, and it was just really, really intense. You know, that kind of pain that you're just like, okay, I can't handle it anymore. I have to go into the hospital. And so I finally decided to go into the emergency room, and because I was pregnant, they took me in right away. And this was week 25 of my pregnancy. So I was really out of it because of just the high levels of pain that I was in. And I was essentially just, the pain was so intense that I passed out. That's the best way I can describe it. And so for the first 3 days, I was just in and out of consciousness, and I didn't even realize what was going on. But by the time I woke up from the passing out period, they had given me 2 blood transfusions, and that was essentially what made me feel better. But the high-risk OBGYN that I was seeing, I had a hematologist who was on my case, and then I also had, you know, the ICU doctor and the pediatric neonatologist. So what was happening was, because of my sickle cell, my body had, my red blood cells had sickled to the extent that I had less than 10% viable normal red blood cells. I was at 83% sickled cells.
Oh my gosh.
83% of the red blood cells in my body were completely sickled. And as you guys know, sickled cells do not carry the right amounts of oxygen, and they don't carry the right amounts of nutrients. So what my body did was shunted the blood to the babies and to my organs. And that's why I kept going in and out of consciousness, because my body was like, okay, well, she doesn't really need her brain that much. She doesn't really need her fingers that much. But we do need to keep her heart healthy, and we do need to keep these babies alive. That's the best way to describe it in layman's terms.
Right.
But that was essentially what was going on. So around the first week of my pregnancy, I got those 2 units. And then the second week of pregnancy, they did an exchange transfusion, and that was essentially so they could pull out the sickle blood and transfuse me with normal red blood cells. So that happened during the second week. And then I started to feel slightly better, biologically, but then the babies were in distress. And on top of that, I was still in excruciating amounts of pain. So it was definitely a challenge. So weeks 3 and 4, they were dealing with my pain and just trying to manage my pain to a manageable level, because they didn't want my pain episode to trigger me going into preterm labor, because the babies, they still were, at that point, they were week 29. So although they could have survived outside of the womb, it was still very tenuous, and they wanted to keep them in as long as possible. So they were managing my pain and monitoring the babies for those weeks 3 and 4 when I was hospitalized. And then week 5, one of my boys, my second-born son, he was my little problem child, because he kept having his heart was not beating as normally as the other child was. So they were really concerned about that, because they thought maybe with the pain medicine, it was affecting his development. And so they were just really, really keeping a close eye on everything that was going on in my body. So week 6, they decided to do another exchange transfusion because my pain was still at super high levels, and they wanted to start weaning me down off the pain meds because they were concerned about the babies. And so I had that second exchange transfusion. And usually you're not supposed to have exchange transfusions back to back like that. You're not supposed to have more than like one every month. And they did it, I think it was like 3 weeks apart that they did it. But they just had to because they had no other alternative. They had nothing else in the toolbox to help manage my pregnancy. And so did that second exchange transfusion, and then they started weaning me off the pain medicine and switching me to oral methadone. Methadone is a pain pill that it doesn't cross the placental barrier. So they thought that with that they would be able to manage my pain, and if I was breastfeeding or if, the baby, they wouldn't be getting such high levels of pain meds that they had been getting previously. So we did the whole methadone, they put me on methadone and they were weaning down the pain meds for week 7 and 8. And then I still had some issues with my little one's fetal heart rate and other like really scary episodes like that. But finally, week 8, they were able to send me home, and I was home for 2 weeks, and then I came back and had the baby. So I was able to carry them to term for a twin pregnancy. I delivered them at 37 and a half weeks, which is what a typical twin pregnancy would be delivered. So I just give glory to God that everything turned out well.
That is spellbinding. I kind of can't come up with another word. That's spellbinding what you went through. But I want to ask you, is it typical for you to have such a prolonged crisis?
No, it's not. Usually my crises last about a week, and then I'm usually able to go home by somewhere in the middle of the second week. So the longest crisis I'd had prior to that was a 10-day crisis. But this one, I was essentially in pain for the entire 2 months that I was in the hospital. Incredible.
Tosin, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that you share it with the hopes that it helps other people understand what can happen. And obviously, we always say when we're talking about sickle cell that every case is different, but there's still information and something to be learned from each case. So thank you for that. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we'll continue speaking with the wonderful Tosin Ola about sickle cell and pregnancy. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, and I am Gary A. Gibson, your host.
I have to come to Indianapolis.
Okay, well, welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, and we are speaking with Tosin Ola, the ultimate Sickle Cell Warrior, or at least the founder of Sickle Cell Warriors, and we're speaking today on our topic, which is sickle cell and pregnancy. And we have just spoken a little bit about the experience that Tosin had with carrying and delivering her twin sons. And she did go through a little bit of trouble, but she did end up with a successful pregnancy, and she has 2 very healthy young boys that are about 22 months. Is that right, Tosin?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, they're 22 months.
They are just so energetic and happy and healthy. They're just like the best kids ever. I love them to pieces.
Awesome. Well, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says, and I quote, "A pregnant woman with sickle cell disease is at a higher risk of preterm labor, having a low birth weight baby, or other complications. However, with early prenatal care and careful monitoring throughout pregnancy, a woman with sickle cell can have a healthy pregnancy." And that's from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So, as you said, you had a difficult pregnancy, but in the end it succeeded. I think you told me before that you did have careful monitoring. So would you please tell us about what kind of monitoring took place with you?
Okay. So I had gone to a regular OBGYN for my first appointment when I found out I was pregnant. And my second appointment, once they found out it was twins, they actually called around to find out where I was going to go, because they said, if you just had regular sickle cell, we would take care of you. But now you have sickle cell and twins, we're not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. You need to go to see a specialist.
Okay.
So they transferred me to a perinatologist, who is a specialist that deals with high-risk pregnancy. So it was a high-risk OBGYN, and they also had a perinatologist on their staff. The perinatologist focuses on the baby, and the high-risk OBGYN focuses on the mother. So the doctor I worked with, oh my goodness, she was the best doctor ever. She had never taken care of a mom with sickle cell,
Really?
but she had done about 100 mothers who have twins. So she was prepared on the twin front, but she had to really educate herself on the sickle cell front. So they brought in my hematologist and his hematology team to consult on the sickle cell aspect of my care. And so everything I was at the University Hospital in San Diego, and so everything was in-house. So everyone had, access to all my records. They knew what all the other doctors were doing, and they were kind of developing a comprehensive, multidisciplinary approach in caring for me. Everything was okay until I got hospitalized. Once I got hospitalized, I feel like everyone was stuck in their individual boxes. So my hematologist only wanted to address my sickle cell, and the perinatologist only wanted to address the babies. My high-risk OBGYN, she was the one who was managing my full care and writing all the orders for everything going on. But I realized by week 3 that they all were not talking to each other. So they would come in and they would tell me one thing, and then they would leave, and then the next team would come in and say something else, and I could just tell, they were not talking to each other. So one thing I did, I called a meeting, and I said, all of you, we need to have a meeting every Thursday at 3 o'clock. Everybody come to my room, and we're going to have a meeting, and we're all going to get on the same page. Because I was tired of, I felt like it was, what's that kids game where you whisper in someone's ear, and then you whisper to the next person,
right.
And then it, by the time it gets around, it's a whole different story. That's how I felt my care was going on. So we started doing these weekly meetings, and that really just got everyone on the same page with my hospitalization. Oh, I also had a pain management specialist that was on my team who was handling my pain, because I had maxed out on the usual doses of pain medicine, and they were just really nervous with the pregnancy, what in the IV pain meds that they would give me. So I had a pain specialist, and then I also had the nephrology team. They were the ones in charge of the exchange transfusions and the line that was being put in for the exchange transfusions. And then I also had the radiology people, and they were the ones doing the ultrasounds on the babies every day. So it was a lot of moving parts, and I felt almost like I was a conductor, and I was just directing the symphony.
Right. That's what it takes, though,
yeah,
right?
That's what it takes, exactly. And the boys, because they're twins, they were going to have a low birth weight anyway, but they both came out at 5 pounds, 5 ounces, and essentially I was carrying an 11-pound baby,
Right.
And my pregnancy got so big, my belly got so big, that it was really hard for me to breathe. My feet got swollen because the pregnancy was reducing the circulation of the blood going back up to the rest of my body from my legs. So my feet were swollen, my belly was huge, I was fat as a porcupine. But, and then the other thing was, I had the dietitian come in every other day, and she kept telling me that I wasn't eating enough, that the boys were not eating enough, and I needed to belly. Like, I seriously could not eat another bite. So they had me do the Ensure shake so that I would ingest more calories because apparently I wasn't eating enough. So it was definitely a lot going on, but I needed to have that higher level of care in order to have a successful pregnancy. And I mean, I've heard of people where, you know, they didn't know that they needed this higher level of care and they were just going to a regular OBGYN, and if something had happened, the regular OBGYN might not have been sure how to handle it. But I really think because of that comprehensive, multidisciplinary, higher level of care, that was really what helped me have a successful pregnancy.
Absolutely, I would say so. Let me ask you this, though. Was it difficult for you to establish these Thursday meetings? I mean, you know, sometimes telling the doctors that we need to do this doesn't work so easy. How were you able to ensure that they all started participating on those Thursdays?
So I went through my nurse and the charge nurse, because once you have, I was like, at that point I had become like a VIP patient because I was there, I had already been there for a month on the unit. So everybody knew who I was, all the nurses had taken care of me, everybody was comfortable with me. And so I just asked my nurse and said, look, this is my issue. The hematologist doesn't know what the OBGYN is saying. The OBGYN doesn't know what the pain people are saying. And I'm tired of relaying it back and forth because it's just not making my care continuous. So I asked my nurse, and my nurse told the charge nurse, and the charge nurse talked to all the doctors and organized it.
Okay.
And then when the doctors would come and see me every day, because they all would come at different times, I pretty much told them, just so you know, we're having a meeting Thursday, 3 o'clock. If you can't come, send someone.
Okay.
So the first time we did it, it was only 3 services that came, and then the next week I had 5 services that came, and so it just depended on you know, people's schedules and who was available. But if they missed the meeting and then I see them, you know, the next few days and they're asking me questions, I'm like, well, we talked about it in the meeting, where were you?
Right.
And I just really acted like I was a teacher and they were my students, and I was like taking roll call, and you missed the meeting, so go talk to your classmates because you shouldn't have missed the meeting. But they were all really good natured about it, and by the 3rd week we did it, everyone, if they couldn't make it, they would come see me ahead of time, just, you know, or afterwards, just to like have the continuous care going on. But that was something that they had never done before, and I was surprised that I had to be the one who suggested it. But I'm glad that I did, because it just allowed everyone to be on the same page and come up with a plan that made sense.
Okay, so I think you might have already sort of answered this, but I guess I still want to ask it anyway. ASH, the American Society of Hematology, published a report in 2015 that stated that pregnant women with a severe form of sickle cell disease are 6 times more likely to die during or following pregnancy, and to have an increased risk for stillbirth, high blood pressure, and preterm delivery. They should, I believe, should also include the risk of miscarriage, because as you said, it happened to you, and as I say in my opening statement, it happened in my life where we lost twins. And so I guess I want to know, since it all sounds so scary on the surface, did your basic original OBGYN advise you of these facts, or I think you said she sort of said, no, I can't handle this? Tell me, let's go over that just a little bit one more time. How did your primary OBGYN respond to the news of your pregnancy?
So the first thing when I called to make an appointment is I had to see the nurse practitioner. And so the nurse practitioner evaluated me, and I was 7 weeks at that time. And then she said, okay, well, the next time you come, you're going to see the OBGYN. Because I guess the nurse practitioner pre-screens everyone to make sure that they're really pregnant. And so she she had scheduled me for the ultrasound because she just wasn't sure with the room ultrasound, the small one. She was like, I'm not sure what I'm hearing. It just sounded weird to her. And so she said, I'm going to schedule you for an internal ultrasound. And so that was scheduled for the same week that I had seen her. So once I did that one and they told me that I was having twins, I called the NP and I said, hey, I need to schedule the appointment to see the regular OBGYN. So by then they had received my chart and realized I was having twins. I never even got to see my regular OBGYN because she called me and she said, look, I reviewed your chart and, we felt comfortable managing your normal women's health issues with your sickle cell, but because you have a twin pregnancy now, you're deemed too high risk for us. We're like a regular practice for regular women who have regular women issues, but you're like officially in the high risk category. They have a ranking system, a rating system, and it was like out of 5 things, I had 3 of them because I had previous miscarriages, I had a twin pregnancy, and I had a pre-existing condition. So that I definitely ranked to see it a high risk.
High risk, right.
So she pretty much called me and she said, look, I'm not even going to waste your time. This is what I recommend. I'm going to make a referral to the high risk OBGYN service and they need to take over your care. And so they transferred my file over and I called them and made my follow-up appointment with them. And I had to see them for my first trimester. I was seeing them every 2 weeks. And then once I got into my second trimester, for my first trimester, I was seeing them every month. And then once I got in my second trimester, I was seeing them every 2 weeks. And they were monitoring my weight. They monitored my urine to make sure I didn't have, pregnancy-related diabetes. They measured my blood pressure to make sure I didn't have hypertension related from the pregnancy. And so I was seeing them. By the time we got to every 2 weeks, they were also strapping the monitors on and looking at the babies and looking at their heartbeats and making sure they were developing properly. And we had several internal ultrasounds for their development that were even beyond what a typical normal pregnancy does, because that was one of the factors for the high risk. And then once I was hospitalized, essentially, either my doctor or someone from her service would come and see me every single day throughout the rest of my pregnancy. When I got discharged after I'd been in the hospital for 2 months, I was back to seeing them every week. And I think I only saw them twice. And then the third time I saw them, I went into labor that evening, and I delivered the boys early the next morning. And labor for me, oh my gosh, after having been in excruciating 10 out of 10 pain for 65 days, labor for me was like a walk in the park.
Really?
I mean, oh my gosh, Gary, it was so easy. I didn't have to get any meds. I didn't even know I was in labor. So I saw the doctor. She examined me. She said, everything looks good. And she said, look, you're at 37 and a half weeks, and I usually don't want twin pregnancy to go past 38 weeks. So we're going to schedule to induce you the following week. And this was a Thursday. So we had a schedule to induce me the following Thursday. And then I went home, and I wasn't feeling like myself. So I thought it was my sickle cell acting up. I was like, I've had a really busy day. Let me just go lie down and see how I'm feeling. So I went and I laid down for a couple of hours. And I was just really uncomfortable and just couldn't settle down. And then by hour 3, it was at that point, it was 7 p.m. at night. I just felt like I really needed to pee. I needed to pee so bad. If I didn't pee right now, I was going to wet the bed. That's how bad I felt like I needed to pee. So I rushed up. I got out of bed. I went to the bathroom. I tried to pee. Nothing came out. So I was like, oh, okay. False alarm. Pregnancy, false alarm. I go back to bed. Same thing happens again 10 minutes later. And it just kept happening like that. This urge to pee, and I couldn't pee. So I kept going up and down, and it didn't click in my mind that I was in labor. I thought maybe I had a UTI. I thought maybe it was like something related because I just felt like I needed to pee so bad. So I just kept going like up and down like this. My husband fell asleep. My mom was asleep. And then around 1 a.m., I like flushed in the bathroom again. Finally, I was able to like squeeze some pee out. I was like, okay, good. And then my mom's bedroom is right by my bathroom. So she kept hearing me going to the bathroom and flushing and flushing. So she comes out at 1 a.m. She's like, Tosin, what is going on? And I was like, Mom, I just keep feeling this urge to pee and nothing's coming out. And she's like, Tosin, you're probably in labor.
Gosh.
So my mom is like, you guys, you need to go to the hospital right now. She like wakes my husband up. I'm like, oh, but Mom, I haven't packed my bag. I need to call the hospital. I need to eat something. I was just futzing around. Like, I already had like 2 scares where I rushed to the hospital and they told me I wasn't in labor. So I just thought it was like a false alarm. I was like, oh, it's because I thought in my imagination and just from hearing and watching movies, I always hear all these stories about how labor is like the worst thing known to women and how it's like so horrible, and I'm like, I haven't felt anything like that. So I just kept telling her, I'm like, I don't want to have a false alarm. Okay, let me eat something. Let me take a shower. Let me pack my hospital bag. I was really just meandering around the house from 1 o'clock until like 3 a.m. when my mom was like, okay, you really, like, we need to go now. And if she didn't put that pressure on me, I probably would have had the babies in the house. Because by the time we got to the hospital, my water had broken, and one of the babies, his head had already, like, started coming out. And I'm, like, holding his head and, like, don't come out yet, baby.
Oh, gosh.
So we get to the hospital, and they, like, I get in the wheelchair, and the guy pushing the wheelchair, he bypasses the ER. He's like, we're not even going to go to the ER, because I told him I was crowning. And so they just ran straight to the labor and delivery, and they were like, okay, just get on the bed. And I was like, you don't understand, the baby's, like, right here. If I get on the bed, this baby's coming out. So y'all better be ready. And so the doctor was like, I'm ready, but she really wasn't, because she was still trying to put her sterile gloves on. So I just laid down, and sure enough, my firstborn, Ariel, just came out without even, like, anything. He was just like, what's up? And so she was like, the doctor was still trying to, like, get her stuff together. It was so hilarious.
Oh, gosh, you're making it sound hilarious.
So, we have, like, 20 healthcare professionals in the room because everyone had, we had called when I was coming to the hospital, and they had read my file, and they knew I was having twins, and they knew I was high risk. So the anesthesiologist was trying to put an IV in my right arm. The nurse was like hooking me up to the blood pressure monitor. Everybody was doing something. It was just super chaotic. And then the doctor's like, okay, let me check and make sure the second baby, the cord is not around his neck or anything. He was fine. And 10 minutes later, the other baby came out, and he just like popped out like, I've arrived! And he started crying right away. And then that sets the first one off. So the both of them are crying. I'm like, okay, they're good. And then they're relaxing.
Well.
And then I just got so tired after that. I just wanted to sleep for the whole day. But my babies are here, so I was really excited.
You know, Tosin, there's at least 2 lessons in that story you just shared with us. The one is that Tosin Ola, the superstar, is a real person. She's just real down to earth. The way that you're just so free speaking about what happened. You're a real person, and we really appreciate that about you. And the second lesson, of course, is what we've heard before, that the pain of labor does not compare to a sickle cell pain. So, from what you said, and you said it so remarkably well, that the pain of your labor was like a walk in the park. I think that's hard for a lot of people to put their hands around.
Yeah, I think with sickle cell, you're used to such high levels of intensity all over your body. You're used to that. You've had it. You've had crises multiple times, so you know what that feels like. For a typical person like a Nancy or Sally, who has never had any pain in her life, maybe the hardest thing she had is maybe she got cramps, or she twisted her ankle one time. She has no point of comparison. So to them, they're like, oh, this is the worst pain I've ever had. I had to have an epidural. I thought I was going to die, blah, blah, blah. But to us, that's like a crisis on an 8-day, you know?
Wow. Wow.
So, I mean, it's not like that for everyone. I mean, some people, you know, it's very painful and very uncomfortable, and some people have to have an epidural. I'm not saying it's like that for everybody, but for me, it was just like nothing. I mean, by the time the babies were out before they even got my IV in. The babies were out before they even checked my blood pressure.
Gosh. Well, with that story, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion with the very lively Tosin Ola. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, and I am Gary A. Gibson, your host. Welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, and we are live from Indianapolis, Indiana, talking to you about sickle cell disease and all related matters. And we are grateful that on the phone with us today is none other than Tosin Ola, the founder of Sickle Cell Warriors, a mother of twin boys, and what else? A nurse. That's what it was. A nurse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, before we get back to Tosin, I do want to give you some information about our new sponsor. And our new sponsor, we're really happy that they're on board with us. Currently, or going forward now, the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show is sponsored by Prolong Pharmaceuticals, headquartered in South Plainfield, New Jersey. Prolong Pharmaceuticals is developing products to treat several diseases and their debilitating comorbidities associated with reduced quality of life, increased medical cost, and significant mortality. A portfolio of hematology and oncology products is in development. Prolong is developing a new drug for sickle cell disease. The drug is called Sanguinate. Sanguinate, currently in clinical testing, is an investigational biopharmaceutical product that facilitates the transfer of oxygen to oxygen-deprived cells and tissues, focusing on treating the comorbidities of sickle cell disease and other disorders caused by anemia or hypoxia ischemia. Sanguinate is the only biological product currently in clinical development for multiple comorbidities of sickle cell disease, and it recently received an orphan drug designation from the US FDA. Many of the comorbidities of sickle cell disease are caused by a spiraling cycle of sickling, hemolysis, and blood vessel inflammation. These comorbidities include vaso-occlusive crisis, acute chest syndrome, leg ulcers, and pediatric and adult stroke. By correcting oxygen levels and down-regulating inflammation, Sanguinate has the promise of effectively treating many of the debilitating acute comorbidities associated with sickle cell disease. We are happy and proud that Prolong Pharmaceuticals has joined our family and our fight against sickle cell disease. So welcome to Prolong Pharmaceuticals, our sponsor of the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. With that said, let me go back to Tosin Ola, and we will continue our discussion about sickle cell and pregnancy. And Tosin, I'm going to kind of pick up where we left off. I mentioned earlier that the American Society of Hematology, put forth a pretty straightforward, I guess a kind of like a caution label about sickle cell patients getting pregnant, saying that there's so many different things that can happen. And my next question to you is, with that kind of information, knowing that you were going to have a high-risk pregnancy, knowing that there was the chance that you might die or that your children might be stillborn or whatever, my question is, with that kind of information in front of you, what emboldened you or motivated you to proceed?
Well, it was actually two of my friends who also have sickle cell hemoglobin SS. One of them was Maddie, you know Maddie?
Yes.
And the other one was Helen. And Helen, we met at it was so funny. We met at the FDA meeting.
We're talking about Helen Sarpong?
Yeah,
in Boston?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So we met at the FDA meeting in 2013, and we were all just chilling in my hotel room, just talking, and I had mentioned to them how afraid I was about getting pregnant, and, just, everything, the complications, and how I really wanted to have kids, but I didn't think I would be able to successfully go through pregnancy, especially because at that point I had had 2 miscarriages. So Helen has a pair of twins, and they're girls, Layla and, oh gosh, I forgot her other little girl's name. She's going to kill me. So she has these twins, and they, at that time, were 5 years old. And so she told me, she said, look, Tosin, if I can do it, you can do it. And we have the same type of sickle cell. You just need to really just be on your game, take care of your body, listen to what the doctors say, don't be afraid. If it's for you, it's for you. God will make a way, and just don't be afraid. And if I could do it, you could do it. And I'm here to support you and guide you and give you any advice or encouragement that you need. And Maddie essentially said the same thing. I call Maddie like my mentor mom because her son is 6 months older than the twins. So we were essentially pregnant around the same time. So we were both like going through a lot of, like, she would go through it first, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I see what's going to happen with the boys. So it was just really nice to have that conversation, and that was the first time that I'd had conversations with moms who are my age. Like, I had seen, older people who had kids with sickle cell disease, but it's somehow abstract versus seeing someone who's my age, my background, just very similar to me, and they were able to successfully go through it. And so that just took the fear away. It was almost like a gradual process, but it essentially took the fear away from me. And I already know that, the mortality and the morbidity for what they say with sickle cell is decreased. And at the same time, I'm still living my life every day, just fantastically happy and living the best life that I can live. So why am I going to let this other guideline hold me back from my dreams and what I want? And, I already know that if I had children, they weren't going to have sickle cell disease because my husband doesn't have the trait. He's AA. So that had already been essentially ruled out.
Right.
And so the only thing was, can I really carry a pregnancy successfully to term? And I was just like, you know what? If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So we just completely got off birth control, and we were just having fun and practicing. And sure enough, once I got pregnant, I was very afraid. I mean, when they told me that I was going to have twins, I burst into tears. And the ultrasound lady was shocked because she said usually when you tell people they're having twins, they're very happy. But I was crying because I just couldn't believe it. I was in shock. And also I was like, oh my goodness, it's just going to make the challenge of having a successful pregnancy even harder, But my husband's like, it's okay, babe. Don't worry. We got this. Don't be afraid. It's going to be fine. And, and it's good that the boys have each other because being a mom with kids, it's very challenging. And then you throw in sickle cell and the fatigue and the pain, and you're feeling like crap half of the time, So it's nice that they have each other. They have a playmate. They have someone who's like there for them no matter what. So I think God kind of knew what He was doing in that aspect for letting them be twins.
Okay. Well, and have you ever let Helen and Maddie know that they helped you make up your mind and not be so afraid?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
We talked about it so many times. I mean, I don't think they really realized what a huge impact that conversation had and how it really changed my belief system. Like, I feel like I've mentioned it, but I don't think they really realized that conversation was really the turning point for me in believing that, I can actually successfully have kids.
Well, let me suggest that you make sure that they know that they helped you along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will.
Obviously, Tosin, the most important step towards having a sickle cell pregnancy is maintaining the mother's health, and let's go ahead and talk about that for a minute. Like I said earlier, you have a tremendously informative website, and there is a column on your website entitled Sickle Cell and Pregnancy. And as usual, the information that you give in that column is right on point. In it, you say that one of the first things that women should do is stop taking hydroxyurea. Would you please explain why that is so important?
So hydroxyurea is, for most of us, it's prescribed to help increase our fetal hemoglobin production by the bone marrow. But the thing about hydroxyurea is, if you are taking it while trying to get pregnant or while you're pregnant, it increases the chance of congenital birth defects. Because you have to remember that it's actually changing the biological makeup of your body. And if you are growing a baby, therefore, it's also changing their biological makeup. And so it says it on the bottle. Do not take this medication if you are pregnant or if you are breastfeeding because of those contraindications. So even for men, if you are a male and you are taking hydroxyurea, if you decide that you want to get pregnant, you have to stop taking hydroxyurea and completely be off it before you start getting anyone pregnant.
So before you stopped taking hydroxyurea, how long were you on it, by the way?
I was on it at that point just for a few months. I had started taking it in January.
Okay.
And then I stopped in March, but I never was really a good person taking it anyway, just because I have so many side effects from it that the risk doesn't outweigh the benefits for me most of the time.
Uh-huh.
So as soon as I found out we were pregnant, I threw the rest that I had away. But I probably, I may have had some in my system. I don't know, because I found out we were pregnant in May.
Okay. So are you back on it?
So I started back on it October of last year, but don't tell my doctor that I stopped taking it again, because for me what happens is I don't have any obvious side effects. It just wipes me out. It makes me feel completely depleted energy-wise, exhausted beyond all measure, and I just feel like blah. That's the best description. I just feel like blah. I don't want to do anything. I have no energy to do anything. My mood is depressed. It doesn't make me feel like my vibrant, energetic self, who I want to be. So I stopped taking it again, this month.
Okay.
And I'm just doing a test to see if the hydroxyurea is the cause of it, or if me being pregnant and giving birth to babies was the cause of me feeling like crap.
Okay.
So,
okay.
We'll see.
It's interesting because we do talk about hydroxyurea a lot. We speak to a lot of patients that are taking it, and so many of them say that it is definitely helping them. I have had a few that have said, yeah, there's some side effects or there's some issues that make them not want to take it, or they didn't think it worked for them. But by and far, the majority of people say that it is helping them. So that's why I always ask about it. And thank you for sharing so freely your answer. Your column also gives a thorough discussion of the other medications that should be avoided during pregnancy, and you sort of touched on that earlier in the show, but would you go over some of those for our audience? And as you do, please give us a little background. So, for instance, stopping the the heavy opioids and instead using methadone as an example.
Yeah. So this one is a really hard one with the opiates, because with sickle cell, you're going to have pain, and you're going to have times when the pain is really, really bad, and the Tylenol is not working, and nothing in your arsenal is working. If you're pregnant, I had to go over this with my doctor, because I was so nervous about taking pain pills, but at the same time, I didn't want to trigger, some other complication like labor or spontaneous abortion or anything like that, because I was in so much pain. So this is what my doctor told me. She said, first trimester, the baby is developing. Everything is developing. The heart, the lungs, the organs. You want to take as little medication as possible. And the thing about it is, your blood levels actually increase naturally by your pregnancy. So in my first trimester, I wasn't having a lot of sickle cell pain. Second trimester, it's okay, she said, to take certain medications in moderation. And so if I had, and essentially, if I had the pain where it was like an 8, a 9, or a 10, I could take like one pill of my oxycodone. But she didn't want me on the long-acting, and she didn't want me on any like OxyContin, MS-Contin, any of those long-acting stuff. She just wanted me on the short-acting. And what she said is, you can take one pill and see with Tylenol and see if that manages your pain. If it doesn't manage your pain in 4 hours, you can take one more pill. After that, you need to come into the emergency room because we need to be able to monitor the babies while you're getting other medication. So when I was hospitalized for those for the 2 months, I was on IV pain medicine for pretty much most of the time. I was there for 8 weeks, and for 7 of those 8 weeks, I was on IV pain medicine. And they had me on Dilaudid, but I was having like really bad hallucinations from Dilaudid. So they took me off of Dilaudid by week 2, and then they started me on fentanyl. Fentanyl is a short-acting opiate in that it cycles through your body and is excreted within 5 minutes. So the thought was that it has such a short half-life that even if, I went into labor early and I delivered the babies early, that it wouldn't cause as bad of a respiratory depression in them because it would clear the system quickly. So fentanyl was what I was on from like week 2 all the way to like week 6 is when they started doing the methadone, and they were giving me the methadone and then increasing my dose of methadone and decreasing my dose of fentanyl. And they essentially did that until I was completely off the IV fentanyl and only taking methadone. Methadone is it's not like your typical opiate because it's a long-acting agonist, so it doesn't kick in right away like, say, oxycodone would, but it lasts longer. So the half-life is 8 to 12 hours, so it actually lasts in your system much longer. But the thing about methadone is you have to take it for like 3 to 5 days before you feel it working. And some people, they do have side effects with it. Some people don't tolerate it well. Some people have issues taking other pain meds because they've been on methadone. So it's definitely like a medication that needs to be under doctor supervision. But the benefit of methadone is that, like I said earlier, it doesn't cross through breastfeeding, and it doesn't cross through the placental barrier. All the other opiates generally do. So you need to look to see if it's a Schedule 1, a Schedule 2, or a Schedule 3. And you can actually Google that to figure it out. If it's a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2, it has a lesser chance of affecting your child, but a Schedule 3 definitely crosses the placental barrier and definitely may cause complications. Now, the main complication that they're worried about is having a child that is dependent on narcotics when they're born, or that they have respiratory depression, which means that they're not breathing properly when they're born because they're kind of in that, like, medicated state. So what they told me is your children may have to be in the ICU because you've been on pain meds for, essentially for this long of a time. They may have to be in the ICU for a few days, and we might have to wean them off the pain medication. And essentially what they do is they just give them, like, whatever the medication is, like a little dose, and wean them off, gradually giving them less and less and less until they have no more in their system. That's not their preferred method. They prefer to not have to do that, but they do have that in the NICU if they have to, if it's necessary. My boys were in the NICU for 5 days, and they thought that they would have to do the weaning protocol respiratory depression protocol for them, but they had none of that. The reason they were in the NICU was because of their low birth weight, because they were 5 pounds 5 ounces, which is generally normal for twins, but for like the hospital, they prefer to have bigger babies. So they were in the NICU to gain weight. And then the second reason they were in the NICU was because I was like pretty much giving birth in the car. One of them had a like stress meconium, and that's like when the baby pooped. And so they were concerned that there was some stool in their lungs, but that ended up not being an issue. So they were only in the NICU for 5 days. They probably would have discharged us earlier, but I just wasn't ready to like take care of.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was dragging for like the last 48 hours to bring them home, because I knew once I came home, it'd be all like Donkey Kong. Like,
Donkey Kong.
Never, ever sleep again.
Tosin, thank you so much. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll start wrapping up our conversation with you, if that's okay. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, and I am Gary A. Gibson, your host. Welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host, and we are speaking with Tosin Ola from Sickle Cell Warriors, and a mother of twin boys, 22 months old. A wealth of information for the sickle cell community, and we've been having a great conversation with her. She's a real down-to-earth person. We're glad that she's here with us. And Tosin, as we start to wrap up today's show, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions about the pregnancy, and then I'm going to switch gears on you. But when it comes to pregnancy, do you have any other words of wisdom that you have for women with sickle cell who are contemplating having their first child?
Okay, so just educate yourself as much as you can, and it's going to be difficult to find a high-risk doctor who also knows about sickle cell. I tried to do that in the beginning, and I live in San Diego, and the one person who was able, she lived in Los Angeles, and there's no way I could have done that commute with the amount of times I had to see a doctor. So don't be as stuck on having a high-risk doctor who also knows sickle cell. But as soon as you find out you're pregnant, you do need to find a high-risk OBGYN, and there's one in every single city. There's so many other women who require high-risk OBGYN, so there's a lot of successful practices in your city. And you could ask your doctor for a referral, or you could just do a Google search and find someone. You essentially have to educate the doctors about your body.
That's an important point.
No one knows your body like you do. And yes, they may be doctors and have all these degrees, but if you just feel like something's not right, you need to communicate that effectively. You need to advocate for yourself and teach your family to advocate for you. I wasn't, like I said, I was essentially in and out of it for the first 3 days when I was in the hospital. And my family had to really pick up the bulk of my care during that time. So, for the sake of your health and the sake of your baby, don't leave anything to chance. It's better to over-prepare and nothing happens than for you not to be prepared and something happens. So oftentimes when we get pregnant, we're focused on all the glitz and glam of it, like setting up the nursery and planning your baby shower. But all those things are like afterthoughts. The main thing you need to be focused on is your health and the health of your baby. The healthier you are going into your pregnancy, the better it is for you. So if you're overweight, try to lose weight before you get pregnant. Try to do some exercises. Yoga is great. You can even do it while you're pregnant. You need to strengthen your legs. You need to strengthen your hips. So don't just be like a lazy lollipop laying around because you're pregnant. You have to really, really strengthen your body to be able to carry the pregnancy. The other thing is eat well. It's so easy for you. You have all these cravings now that you're pregnant. You want to eat all this junk food. And it's okay. You can have junk food on occasion. But for your body is essentially creating life. You're bringing new life into the world. So try to eat as much green leafy vegetables, beets, carrots, juice, I mean, if you make a vegetable juice every day, you can eat junk for the rest of the day when you have all your nutrients that your body needs that day. Don't skip on your prenatal vitamins. They have the edible kinds, which are really good. I love them. I never miss them. And also you need to take calcium. And just take care of yourself. And, have strong faith that, it's a miracle baby, and, the God that has brought you this far is not going to let you down. You don't have to be negative about it. You don't have to be afraid about it. But just speak blessings into your life. Journal as much as you can, because once the baby comes, you're not going to have any time for yourself. So.
Okay. That is a lot of good information, Tosin. Thank you for sharing it. I'm sure those that are listening that are contemplating getting pregnant picked up a whole lot from you. But let's also remind them that if they missed some of it, they can go to your website, and there is a column that you have there about sickle cell and pregnancy that is quite informative and does say some of the things you've just said. So what is your website address for those that are listening?
It's SickleCellWarriors.com, www.SickleCellWarriors.com, and we're also on Facebook, Sickle Cell Warriors, because all of us, I always say we're warriors. Every crisis is a battle, but we're here for the long haul, so
okay.
We're all warriors.
So I'm going to change direction now, and I'd like to ask you to talk about MAST Therapeutics EPIC trial. We were grateful that MAST did so many things for the sickle cell community. They also sponsored the Sickle Cell Action Network show for the first year. But from the standpoint of the EPIC clinical trial, which actually ended up as a disappointment, would you explain what happened to our audience?
Well, essentially, the trial did not meet the clinical endpoint, and for a drug to get approved, a phase 3 trial, for a drug to get approved, you have to meet whatever your goal that you set, your parameters. And this is called a clinical endpoint. The FDA works with you to decide what your clinical endpoint is. And our clinical endpoint was that our drug, the fluoxetine, would show that if you took it, it would shorten your crisis. But that was not the case. That was not the result that we got. There was no variance in it, and unfortunately, it didn't turn out the way we expected. But there was a lot of benefit, like you said, in the sickle cell community from the advocacy work that MAST Therapeutics did, and there was a lot of information that they learned about the drug and about designing a study. I think it's important for the sickle cell community to know that there are companies working on development for sickle cell drugs. It's just that the challenges to bring a drug to the market are really, really, really difficult. And this one about the endpoint, I really wish that there was a way that the FDA, that we could communicate better to the FDA. Because really, as a patient with sickle cell, do I care if this drug, works in my body? Do I care whether or not if I got out 8 hours earlier versus 16 hours earlier? Does that really matter in the grand scheme of things, provided that this drug, made my tissues, made the blood flow better in my body? And it's just a discussion that we as a community need to have with the FDA in how they choose what these endpoints are and what really matters to us patients. And for me, what matters is my quality of life. I want to maintain my organs and my tissues. I want to not feel tired all the time. I want to not have this excruciating pain episode. But, those things are hard to measure. It's very hard to measure quality of life. There's no tool to measure quality of life. And these are the challenges that pharmaceutical companies face.
Okay. Well, I've already stated in a previous show my disappointment about these results, because it means that MAST is no longer going to be able to be the community partner that it had become and was for the last 4 or 5 years or whatever. How do you feel about it, Tosin?
Oh, I was extremely disappointed, because I believed that it was going to work. I studied the science, and I really believed that the drug was going to work. And it's so funny, at our conference in July, I had someone come talk to me, and they said, we don't really think this trial is going to be successful. And I looked at it and I was like, do not manifest that negativity.
Right.
But because I really strongly believe it's the marrow of my bones. I mean, I staked my career on it. I moved my family down here because of it. So I really believed in it, and I'm just extremely disappointed that it didn't work out. But that is how it goes in the pharmaceutical industry. Sometimes you have a success, but before you have that success, you may have had like a bunch of failures. And the other companies that are doing research in sickle cell don't feel discouraged and quit sickle cell, because we do need treatment options. And this approach didn't work, but there's so many other approaches that hopefully will be successful.
Right, there are some very promising products in development right now. So before we let you go, is there anything else that you'd like to add or share with our audience, Tosin?
I am going to put pictures of the babies up for you guys, because I know how everyone loves baby pictures. So
yeah.
I'm on Instagram, @Warriors Twins, and I usually put pictures of the boys up once in a while, just to show people this miracle that has been brought into my life, and I'm just really, really grateful, and I'm really happy that we survived. But I would never do it again.
So you don't want to do it again?
Knowing what I know now, I did it. It's done. We have twins to show for it. It's a wrap.
And it's a wrap. That's it. That's all we need, right?
It's a wrap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tosin, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate your energy. We appreciate the work that you're doing for advocacy for those that have sickle cell disease. And we look forward to having you on the show yet again sometime in the near future. So,
thank you, Gary. Thank you so much, and all the great work you're doing with the Martin Sickle Cell Initiative and with the radio show. You're really a trailblazer, and just definitely keep up the great work, Gary.
Thank you, Tosin. It's great speaking with you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us now to start wrapping up our show, and we'll do that. Just a moment here. All right. Always like to leave you with something to think about. And today, we're going to leave you with a quote that actually comes from Vice President Joe Biden. Vice President Biden said, "Reality has a way of intruding. Reality eventually intrudes on everything." Of course, Joe Biden is the 47th and current Vice President of the United States, having been jointly elected twice with President Barack Obama. A member of the Democratic Party, Biden represented Delaware as a United States Senator from 1973 until becoming Vice President in 2009. Biden knows a thing or two about reality because he's lived it. Almost 43 years after two of his family members died in a tragic automobile accident, Biden was struck by another tragedy last year when his son Beau died of cancer at the age of 46. In recent weeks, I have been sharing a lot of good news about the many wonderful, exciting things that are happening in the sickle cell field. I continue to feel tremendous optimism because of these positive trends, but I think it's time to interject a little reality into the discussion. After all, as Vice President Biden says, reality has a way of intruding, and it definitely does intrude into the lives of many millions of people living with sickle cell disease all around the world. Do you want to know why sickle cell can do such a good job of intruding? I'll tell you why. The reason is because that's what sickle cell is. It, in and of itself, is an intruder. From the very moment of conception until the very end of the patient's life, sickle cell intrudes on virtually every aspect of their being. Of course, it starts when the sickle cell gene inserts itself into the fetus's DNA. From there, it continuously intrudes by randomly interjecting pain, unbelievably intense pain, into the patient's body. As the patient ages, it intrudes even more by causing complication after complication in the patient's health. But it doesn't stop there. No, sickle cell intrudes by placing itself into the patient's emotions, finances, education, and their educational and occupational opportunities. And as we've discussed in today's show, sickle cell even intrudes itself into one of the most sacred things of all, a mother's pregnancy. There is nothing like an unwanted intruder. I'm not talking about something harmless and simple like the friend who decides to photobomb your selfie picture. Nor am I talking about the yellow jacket that keeps buzzing around your food at the family picnic. No, sickle cell's intrusions are many, many magnitudes worse than those two examples. Sickle cell's intrusions are typically mean, dispirited, and always unwelcome. It is unfortunate, but that is the reality. That is why it is so important that we work together to keep the positive momentum going. We have to work together to change the current reality. We have to create a world in which sickle cell no longer has the power to intrude on people's lives like it does today. That's why it's so important for us to recognize and acknowledge the realities of sickle cell. Its intrusions can have a very negative impact on a person's quality of life. Its intrusions also have an impact on our world's healthcare system and our world's economy. That means that, whether you have thought about this or not, the reality is that sickle cell is intruding on every one of us. So it is not the only reality that intrudes on everything, as Joe Biden said. Sickle cell also intrudes, and its intrusions are not welcome. Let's keep working together to change that reality and replace it with a new one. Let's create a new reality, one in which sickle cell is no longer capable of intruding. The only way to do that is to get rid of it once and for all. That's our show for today. Please join us again next week, same time, same station.